Welcome to episode 5 of Inside the Game on One Soccer and the One Soccer platforms. High five. I am Gareth Wheeler, thrilled to have you aboard. I am basically your isolation BFF as we continue to stay home and stay safe and stay sane. And that's why we put together broadcasts like this. We continue to bring you great guests, pulling back the curtain and sharing their collective soccer experiences. This series is really a pivot if you're joining us for the first time. Thank you very much. We're just taking a breath and taking time to help you get to know those individuals who help shape the game, who you cheer for week in, week out. And we love to dig a little deeper, tapping into their collective experiences. And hey, guess what? We're learning a thing or two as well. It's a good use of our time. And during isolation, we discover various things. I've discovered a new talent. I am excellent at wasting time, like doing nothing but doing something at the very same time. I've got my PhD in that right now. And all the meanwhile, I'm continuing to grow this sweet mustache right there. Eat it, Uncle Rico. We're looking good and hope that you are out there. Let us know what you're doing to take up your time at Gareth Wheeler on Twitter. And that's where you can also send questions for tonight's guest as well. You can also use right here down this side of our YouTube channel. Subscribe, by the way, to One Soccer and ask questions if you have any for tonight's guest as well. So without further ado, actually, a quick reminder, we bring you the One Soccer Hangouts Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow's guest on the Hangouts, it's me. So if you haven't got enough of Gareth Wheeler already, well, I'll be hanging out with you tomorrow as well as the boys. And Wednesday nights, right here on the One Soccer platform, happy hour with the ladies with a focus on the women's game right across One Soccer on YouTube and its digital channels. Now, without further ado, tonight's guest, one of my favorite players and people that I've met while covering the game, and I've been covering it for a long time. He's a former Vancouver Whitecap, a former Toronto FC defender. In my opinion, his story and his persona, one of the most underestimated and really on the face of it, one of the most consistent achievers in Major League Soccer's history. He's a winner through and through. Success has followed him wherever he has gone. In Major League Soccer, he's played for teams that have established a new high for points in a season 3 times. In San Jose in 2012, in Toronto in 2017, and with LAFC in 2019. He's a 3-time Canadian championship winner, 2 clubs included in that, an MLS All Star. He's an Iranian international and was part of the 23-man squad at the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil. He was deservedly named to MLSsoccer.com's Best 11 of the decade, and he's the first MLS defender, get this, with 35 or more assists in over 20,000 minutes played. I'm tired just saying it. Not only that, whenever you're around, he's got a smile on his face, and we hope he brings a smile to yours tonight. I want to welcome Steven Beitashour to the show at SBeta33 on Twitter and Instagram. How you doing, Beta? It's been a while.
I am good. It has been a while. Miss you guys. How are you guys doing? You staying sane?
We're awesome. We're staying sane. We're staying safe. It did snow here today. I mean, you're in Southern California, and I know that you desperately miss that wonky springtime Toronto weather.
I miss it every once in a while. I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have a little snow right now. And then I look outside. I'm like, yeah, the sun is pretty bright right now. I kind of like this too. So let me know if I need to close the shades if it's too bright in here. I don't want to rub it in.
It's looking good. It balances me out because I'm so pale. So it's a nice touch.
Here you
yes. go. Vitamin D. Since we last chatted, you welcomed your first son, your first child to the world. Congratulations on Braden.
Yes, thank you. He is a blessing. So much fun, so active. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm bored sheltering in place, staying home. I can't get out. I'm like, if you have a 1-year-old, you are not bored. You are anything but bored. So it's been a lot of fun though.
Awesome. I saw at the time when you and your wife announced that you were pregnant that co-owner of LAFC, Will Ferrell, he put in the suggestion box the name Will as a potential name for your son. Did you discard it pretty quick?
We did talk, like, that would be pretty funny if we named him Will, and then when he grew up, like, how'd you end up with Will? Actually, So the story would have been pretty cool, but I just think when we ran through our list of like people's name that we like knew from growing up, we're like, we know too many Wills. Let's pick something else. So, but we did think about it.
Prepping for an MLS Cup, that's one thing. Picking a baby name, that's a whole other ballgame.
That's a whole other ballgame. Tell you what, that was tough.
I'm not even going to ask you if Gareth was in the running, or JMO, or Jordan, or anything like that.
I mean, when you play sports, you've just like been around so many different guys with different names, and like you think, oh, this is a unique name. You're like, oh man, I played with this one guy and didn't really like him. We're not picking that name.
Yeah, and if I named it after him, then maybe this guy will get jealous, this teammate, that friend. So too much pressure. I'm looking forward to this because over the years covering Toronto FC, we always talked about what was going on with the team. We were looking forward to the next game, that sort of thing. But now we get to just turn the spotlight just on you for this next little bit. So no pressure with that either, Steven. You grew up, and you have a really interesting story. I kind of documented it in my intro. Over the years, the pathway for players to make their way to Major League Soccer has become much more clear. The time when you were coming up, playing through the ranks, you went a route not taken by that many. Yes, the collegiate ranks. Yes, the MLS Super Draft. But your road was a little bit different than the rest. So I wanted to take some time to spin it all the way back. Your parents moved from Iran to the United States in 1960. Did you grow up as a soccer fan? Was that naturally within your family, or did it come from somewhere else?
Yeah, it's it's funny you mentioned that because it was definitely the path less taken for sure. But it just shows that you could still make it. So I don't want people to be like, oh, you can't go a different path than what everybody else says. Oh, for sure that was the case. But yeah, growing up, soccer was just part of our blood, our heritage, our culture. Like if you talk to any Iranian, anyone from Iran, or anyone that has come here and is living here, soccer is their pride, their joy. It's their everything. So, when you talk about immigrants coming from Iran to the U.S., all I really knew was soccer. I didn't play any of the sports growing up. Thankfully, I think I was naturally talented in soccer. Uh, you know, Coming from my dad, he played growing up. He played all the way, and actually, he played at San Francisco State, where he went to university. And when he told me he was like their MVP, and I was like, "Come on, this is BS." He opens up the yearbook and it says he's legit, like their best player in college. I was like, "Huh, all right." Like that's kind of where I got my skills from. But for sure, just growing up, not that he pushed me towards it. I just think it was in my blood. It was in my DNA to love soccer, and fortunately, I was okay at it.
I read growing up you were a ball boy for
Yes.
San Jose as well. So there is this football culture on the West Coast, right? That maybe oftentimes the focus is on the Eastern Coast teams, especially during the NASL days and beyond that. But really, there's a rich history of playing on the West Coast. So what was it like for you growing up? I know that there's still baseball and football and all these other American sports that get all kinds of attention, but was soccer getting respect at that time when you were growing up on a comparable level?
Yeah, when I was younger, before MLS started in '96, I don't really have too many memories of watching games just because it wasn't around as much. So when the Clash came in, they're the Earthquakes now. My club team, we actually had one of their assistant coaches training us like once a week or something. So it was pretty cool just to be involved with the professional team in that aspect of it. And so in '96, I wish cameras were accessible back then like they are now with the phones in our pocket. But I don't have any pictures of the '96 game, DC versus Clash. It was the first game in MLS history, and our team was one of the many club teams that walked out with both teams onto the field. And I'm like, man, you know how great this picture would have been. Someone has to have it, right? But I was there for that first game. My club was ball boys for many, many games for the Clash at the time. And so, yeah, that's kind of that was my childhood team growing up. I went to actually a lot of games in 2001 when Azadi, who's Iranian
Mhm.
player, he came and played for the Earthquakes. So so yeah, that kind of that started the love for the game for me.
It gives you an early football hero as well, and early reference points. It's funny. I read that your dad worked for Apple and he was an electrical engineer. I mean, seems like he's a genius to me. You chose sports. You chose to use your brain and apply it in a different way.
You know, and he messes around with me. I joke around with him uh, because I actually went to San Diego State to pursue professional soccer, but I started off as an electrical engineer because I wanted to be like my dad. I just quickly realized that you either have to be full in on engineering or full in on going after professional athlete, professional soccer. You can't kind of, half each
Yeah,
one.
sure.
And and so I think back then when my dad was playing, I have no doubt that he could have been a professional soccer player here if it is what it is now back then. So I
Right.
think back then you really didn't have it. You had the indoor leagues, you had the NASL, but it's not what it is now. And so fortunately, the path was a little bit easier for me, but it's getting better and better, and that starts with our youth.
When you were 11 years old, you would have been 11, I believe. Iran played the United States in
Mhm.
one of the most politically charged football matches in history. And there's been a plenty over the years, but that one in particular, because of the history between nations. Did you watch that game with your family? And like it must be, your worlds colliding right in front of you at that time.
Oh yeah, we definitely watched it. The whole household around the TV, and some people were wearing the Iran jersey, some people wearing the U.S. jerseys, and so it was one of those games where we feel like, yes, we're Americans, but then you look back at your culture, at your heritage, similar to what I told you a little bit earlier. It was in my blood, and that's kind of where your blood is.
Sure.
From Iran. Both my parents were born there, and so you have pride in wanting them to do well, but at the same time, it's kind of tough because you're like, well, we live in the U.S. now. We want the U.S. to do well. So definitely butting heads, and it was a tough match to watch and root for just one team.
Iran won. It was their first victory in World Cup history for the nation. I think what you just said, a lot of Canadian soccer fans, it completely resonates with them, right? Because so many people come from different places, and you see it across the cities, across the country when World Cup or Euro hits or any big tournament, that you kind of see loyalties are divided. You're always going to cheer for the country you live in, the place that you reside, the place that you call home,
Yeah,
but that lineage stays with you, and you can't just turn it can't you can't just turn it off.
yeah, exactly, and that's what it is. It's just you have pride in where you came from. You're appreciative of where you are right now, and you never want to dismiss that. But there's something about knowing that the name Beitashour, that's where it comes from. Obviously, if you want to go further back, Beitashour is Assyrian, so a lot of people don't know that my dad's Assyrian and my mom is Persian, and it's just a mix of so much history behind it that I'm proud to be both. But yeah, it's a really cool aspect of life.
You were drafted 30th overall in the 2010 MLS Super Draft. And what I didn't realize at that time, you weren't invited to the MLS Combine. And then I started to dig a little bit deeper. You were a star high school player. You were a midfielder at that time. It wasn't until university that you were converted to a right back. And initially, when you went to San Diego State, you didn't have a full scholarship at first.
I
So
was a
you really had to work for it, Steve.
Yeah, yeah, that was a tough time. That definitely took a lot of grit and determination. It just, what I mentioned earlier, it just wasn't the road. It was the road less taken, and it was tough because I always knew I was a good player. I always had people telling me like, yeah, you're gonna play professionally, but I never really like knew I was going to do it. It was just other people saying you're really good, and when's it gonna be? When's it gonna be? But things like that, not getting real scholarship offers. I wanted to go to the local schools, like Berkeley or Stanford or Santa Clara because they have good soccer programs. But none of them were interested. None of them came calling, looked at me. I emailed all of them. My wife's mom worked at Santa Clara and she spoke to the coach. And it was after the fact that, I was with Earthquakes that he's like, man, we should have listened to you on that one. And so, yeah, I ended up going to San Diego State on no scholarship. So I had to walk on. And I even redshirted my freshman year because I was a midfielder, and it was tough because I'm in high school. I think I'm pretty good. I'm leading our team in assists. I'm scoring a lot of goals. And our forward, I don't want to mention his name, but he has a scholarship to Berkeley, and he has one more goal than me, and he's a forward. I think I had eight goals, and he had 9 goals. And this guy has a scholarship to Berkeley. And I'm like, I can't get any scholarship offers, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And
Were you given an explanation? Like, what did you think it was?
So I know now that a lot of it, and people say, would you change things? I don't know if I would because I like where I'm at now. So I can't say, yeah, I would change this because I don't know if I would be where I'm at now. But my club team growing up, I stayed with the same team, my same coach, my entire youth career from, comp, select, premier, whatever it was back then. It was Ken Bratcher, same coach the whole time. His son was our goalie for however many years, and I never went to bigger clubs that played in bigger tournaments. Unfortunately, we didn't play in many big tournaments. A lot of our team, they were of Hispanic culture, and their families weren't necessarily well off. Not saying that my family was super well off either, but we just couldn't afford these big tournaments where a lot of the scouts go. So I didn't get seen by these universities. I didn't get seen by these scouts. So my whole thing was if I played on a bigger club, I could have got seen by maybe UCLA, maybe by Stanford or Berkeley. So I started behind the 8 ball right from the get go.
Uh, Yet it seemed like that switch from midfield to right back just like kind of elevated things, took things up a notch. How did that change come about? Because oftentimes, like now the fullback or wingback positions, now they're glamorous roles, right? In
Yeah.
a team, they're so important. But back in the day, it was even a decade ago, they'd be like, oh, just go play right back. We think that you might fit in over there.
Yeah.
But you really took the bull by the horns, didn't you?
Yeah, I have to give credit to my college coach actually at San Diego State, Lev Kirshner. He's the one that initially taught me how to defend. I didn't know how to defend growing up.
You didn't know how to really.
I was a number 10 who, even tactically, I was just like, just give me the ball to my feet and let me do my thing, let me dribble. I would just meg people for fun when I was younger. I was mean. I was mean. But growing up, I've become a lot more humble, and I realized like this is not how you play the game. But yeah, he taught me how to defend, and I have to thank him because I've made a living out of it. I've had a decent career so far, but yeah, I think it transitioned well just because I've always been pretty fast. I didn't realize how fast I was till I went to San Diego State and they did the whole 40-yard dash, and I was the fastest on the team. So then kind of gave me an idea. Oh, I can use the speed on the wings, just get up and down. And then I started off as a winger. He switched me to, and then he said, okay, you're gonna play outside back because you have such an engine. Just keep going up and down. And so it kind of worked out.
Yeah, it really worked out for you. Still, you didn't get an invite to the MLS Combine, yet you were still drafted 30th overall. How did that come about? Was it a hometown connection, or was it something that they saw in you that they wanted to take advantage of? And the San Jose Earthquakes, your hometown team, ended up drafting you.
Yeah, so that was again similar to how I walked on to San Diego State. I thought I'd be invited to the MLS Combine, but for whatever reason, the scouts never noticed me, never even mentioned me, and so I was very fortunate and lucky that one of my good childhood friends, his little brother, had Shea Salinas coming out like once a week and coaching his team. And so, long story short, I pretty much asked him how this is going on. How do you know him? And he said, our coach. knows Frank Yallop, who was the coach at the time for the Earthquakes. He has good connection with them. And so I asked my friend, I'm like, hey, do you think you can tell your coach to talk to Frank and say, hey, I've got a player here. He's got 1 year left to San Diego State. I had just gone to Belgium before and got an offer in Belgium, but I didn't want to leave college early. I wanted to get my degree, so I turned down the offer. So kind of like talk me up and like let him know and see what he says. And 2 days later, all of a sudden, Frank Yallop's calling me and invites me to come train with them. And this was the summer before my final semester at San Diego State, and I was like wow, like really. And I was so excited and happy, not just for the opportunity to train with the Earthquakes, and this is my childhood team, but the fact that a stranger, Mark Schrick, who was my friend's coach, he never met me before. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know if I'm a terrible human being, but he trusted one of his players and what he said to him. And this is the beautiful part about human beings and helping each other. He didn't have to do that for me, and he did, and I'm forever grateful. And I talk to Mark, still to this day, just to catch up here and there, see how he's doing, and all that stuff, because we'll forever be connected because of this.
Very cool.
It was a very lucky story, but the opportunity opened up, and I did make the most of it.
And I love how there's that Canadian connection. I mean, Canada is a big part of your life as well, Iranian, American, Canadian, because Frank Yallop, the coach at that time, then obviously 2 stops with Canadian clubs as well. So you make your debut in April of 2010. You mentioned that Kodadad Azizi played for San Jose. Did you speak to him before you signed and before you played? Did you have a chance to speak to an Iranian legend? Like,
I wish. I wish I could have spoken to him, but no. We went to a lot of games when he came over to play for the Earthquakes, and I think it was 2001. But never got to talk to him, and essentially I knew I was the second Iranian there, but we were all very excited that when he came over there, and then when I was able to join the team.
You made your debut, and 10 years later, almost to the day, we're at that point. We're 10 years in a week away. Is there much you can remember about your debut against the Fire?
Oh yeah, it was the second game of the season. I remember the first game we played Salt Lake at Buckshot Stadium, and the right back got a red card. So we got pummeled 3-0. Right back's getting red card. I'm thinking, wow, I might be playing the next game. And so we had the week of training. I trained well, and thankfully Frank gave me my first opportunity, second game of the season, and we ended up beating Chicago. I think it was 2-1 in Chicago, where we hadn't beaten them in the history of the Earthquakes. So I was super excited. I think I wasn't nervous. People always ask, were you nervous for your first game? I was just so like anxious and excited to play that I was just buzzing the whole time. And we won, and I thought that was just going to be okay. There's your game. Our starting right back, Chris Leach, is going to come back. But then they kind of just said, hey, we won. We're not going to change it. And I played a few more games after that.
When I was looking through your stats, you ended up playing 280 games for MLS clubs and counting. And just pulling back the curtain a little bit, every time I saw Steven around Toronto, I would bust his chops about not scoring goals. You didn't score a goal for a Canadian club in any competition, but you scored 5 over the course of your career, and the first one came in your 3rd professional game, Steven.
Yeah. You busted my chops, but you know who also busted my chops? My college coach, who was at that game, because it was against Chivas in LA. So he just made the quick drive from San Diego. And he's like, I had you for 4 years, and you scored this many goals for me. And in your 3rd professional game, you scored a goal. Oh man. It was one of those things. We were down 3-1 at the time. It was like the 90th minute. So I'm usually the last person back on corners or set pieces. I'm always like, hey, if anything goes wrong, you're supposed to just get us out of a jam. And so it's a lot of pressure. I've embraced it, but you never get any glory. You don't get to go get assists. You don't get to go score goals, which fans love. And so when we were down 3-1, he pushed me up to the top of the box, and the corner came in, and it popped out, and I hit it in, eyes closed, left foot. I don't even know where it went. I just saw people celebrating. So I'm like, okay, I think I scored.
Do you know who scored your other 4 goals against?
Yes.
I have them written down. I'm open up putting you on the spot.
It's only 2 other teams.
It is actually.
It's Dallas and San Jose. So I haven't scored many goals. So it's kind of easy to remember. 2 against Dallas, and then the last 2 against San Jose.
Well, yeah, and 3 of those goals came after you left Toronto FC with LAFC. I think I messaged you after one of them and said, like, what's going on with the air out there out west? Just scoring goals like it's it's no one's business.
Yeah, I always joke around. I'm more of an assist person. I don't really I don't get inside the box too often. I'm usually just on the flanks, running up and down, whipping balls in. But the way LAFC played, the fullbacks are more inverted. We're almost playing like midfielders. So there's opportunities where the opponent, their defense is so stretched out, paying attention to Vela and Rossi, that we see a huge gap. We can kind of go in there. And so, yeah, I took the opportunity, and thankfully, I closed my eyes and I shot the ball and it went in. But yeah, got a couple goals I'm thankful for, but I'm more of an assist guy.
Those 2 years of your life must have been an absolute trip. You're drafted, playing for your hometown team. You have a successful first season. Next season, you're an MLS All Star. You're playing for the Supporter Shield winning team, who set a record for points in a season on that great San Jose Earthquakes team, Chris Wondolowski, and a lot of people who have made their way north of the border as well, including Justin Morrow, Jason Hernandez, and others. Yeah. What was that period of time like in your early career? Because when success comes so quickly, you can maybe take it for granted to a certain degree.
Yeah, for sure. That was a fun stretch. It really was, because that was my hometown team growing up. I was a ball boy, like you mentioned. We went to many games, and being able to, I think every kid that is at one of these sporting events dreams about, oh man, when I'm on that field, But unfortunately, it doesn't happen that often. So I really feel fortunate and blessed to live out my dream, because I had that same dream when I was in those stands, at the time Spartan Stadium, watching the Clash or the Earthquakes play. I wanted to be on that field. So those 4 years, I was living out that dream. And so, in 2011, when I led our team in assists as a defender, are you kidding me? Like, I couldn't even dream about doing that. I just wanted to play on the field. And then in 2012, where, I played 33 of 34 games, with JMO, we're both on the All Star team together. We're winning Supporter Shield. You don't dream about that stuff. You just dream about being on that field and maybe scoring a goal. But all the other stuff, it was just so much fun. And I won't forget any of it. There's too many details that I can talk about.
With MLS 25, I mean, that San Jose team is always in the conversation for the best team that didn't win an MLS Cup. I mean, where do you stand on that? Because you played for so many really good teams.
Unfortunately, I think this past year with LAFC, we just passed that team of best team to not win it. But yeah, that team was fun. That was a different type of team. No one expected us to be good. We had that blue collar, just no real big names. Wando at the time wasn't a big name. He had just started to rise as far as his goal scoring goes. And so, and we were just known as the comeback kings, the Goonies, never say die.
The Goonies.
It was almost like a joke, but we embraced it. We're like, you know what? This is who we are. And if you look,
it had to be Stephen Leonard that put it out there for the world to experience.
Everyone loves him for it, but I don't know who started it. But we all embraced it. And if you look at that team on paper, you actually have quality, but none of the names are big. But I love that team. That was a really fun team to be a part of.
Obviously, you fell just a little bit short. And the next stage of your career, it took you up to Vancouver. Were you surprised that you weren't able to stay in San Jose at that time? Because speaking to people in Vancouver, I mean, they needed a right back. YP Lee had just left. And they told me that they just jumped on the opportunity when they found out that you were available to bring you to Vancouver. I mean, it must have been kind of bittersweet in a way. It's a good move to Vancouver, but at the same time, what you're leaving behind.
Yeah, it was bittersweet because I'm leaving my childhood team, a team that at the time, I honestly thought, you know what, I could be here for my entire career, and I really wanted to at the time, but um, unfortunately, pride kicked in where at the time the GM wasn't really making me a great offer, and I'm looking at it like I'm getting called into both U.S. and Iran national team. I was just on the All Star team. I'm getting all these accolades, but for some reason, I'm not being rewarded for it. I understand you wanted me to take a hometown discount, but I just felt like I wasn't being appreciated at all. And when multiple teams started coming in from the MLS, I had to explore those options, and Vancouver for me was the best option at the time.
Your coach at that time, Carl Robinson, called you the best right back in Major League Soccer. And funny enough, you're in Vancouver at the height of their powers, a team that had only made the playoffs one time before you joined, back to back years over 50 points, Western Conference semifinal. And the team kind of had that same feel that San Jose Earthquakes team, some really solid names in that squad, Steven, but lacking that superstar aspect of it. So it looked like a good fit for you, and you guys had all kinds of success, including winning a Canadian championship.
Yeah, going there, I knew they could be decent. I think uh, 2013, when I was with the Earthquakes, they finished just below us in the standings. But I knew they had some decent players. I knew that YP was, I think, announcing his retirement at the end of the season, so they were looking for someone to replace him and not too big of a drop off because that's a legendary player right there. And so when Carl comes calling, and I I see how much he valued me and how badly he wanted me to be there. That makes the decision a lot easier when you have a coach that really wants you to come there and and puts you in that high of regard. So it made it easier to go there, and that first year, it was an up and down season, but we did fairly well. We clinched for the playoffs, and you know, for me personally, getting called up to the Iran national team, the World Cup, and then the second year in 2015, we were fighting for a supporter shield. So I think those are two really good years. We won the Canadian Cup in 2015 as well. I think if you look back, you can say those were two very successful years, not just for me in Vancouver, but for Vancouver in general as an organization.
You mentioned it. This was like right around the same period of time that you were called into the Iranian national team. Did it make it easier making that decision, or being an Iranian international player when you were playing club football in Canada rather than the United States?
Um, I don't necessarily think it made it easier because when I actually committed and played my first
Right.
game against Thailand, I was with the Earthquakes in I think it was October
Yeah.
of
2013.
2013. Yeah, and so the World Cup was in 2014, and a lot of my decisions stemmed from the World Cup that in 8 months time, in June of 2014. So I'd always wanted to play for US, and I always thought I would get called in. Unfortunately, it took so long, and I never got cap tied. I never had any games, so I wasn't able to play for Iran. So I did experience that, but it was definitely a tough decision, regardless of being in Canada or US. But yeah, one that definitely had some memories.
Jurgen Klinzer was a coach at that time. I mean, you were on the bench. I believe it was a game against Mexico, another one that you were called up. I don't think you could play based upon injury, but you never ended up playing for the United States. Was the communication clear at that time, Stephen, or was that kind of part of it because Carlos Queiroz, I believe, had just become the coach of Iran right around that time, and there was people around the Iranian national team that wanted you to come play for them. It's kind of hard to say no when you're tied to your homeland and they actually want you to play for them, and the other side's kind of just kind of lukewarm about the ordeal.
Yeah, and that's what it was. The whole time I was playing for the Earthquakes, the national team wasn't calling me. It was Iran that kept calling and saying, "Hey, you know, we want you to play for us." And for whatever reason, whether they were just stalling or the government wouldn't process the paperwork, it just took forever. And so I think in 2013, when the U.S. called, it kind of woke up Iran as far as, hey, just push the paperwork through and let's just get them before U.S. captize them and then we can't use them. And so my whole thing was, how did it take the U.S. this long to really call? I see these kids in college getting caps. I see, I'm seeing these kids on USL teams, signing professional contracts, not even playing for their teams, getting caps. I'm over here playing all these games, getting all these assists. Our team is winning, and somehow I'm not getting called by a team in my own backyard, so to speak, the national team. And I think that goes back to when I was younger, not playing for a big team, not playing with the youth system. And so I was never under their radar. I was never a player in their system. So they just kind of overlooked me. So it's
It ended,
unfortunate, but that's just, I think that's how it goes.
well, it ended up working out. Like you ended up playing 6 games for Iran, including games in Iran. And I think a lot of people in North America don't fully appreciate what life is like over there, what going and playing in a football match is like over there. What was it like for you to play in a country that I presume that you never played before your international experience?
No, I hadn't played there before. That first game was pretty amazing as far as, Azadi is one of the oldest, most historic stadiums. It holds 100,000 fans. And, at the time, they didn't allow female spectators. So you have 100,000 male fans just screaming at the top of their lungs. So you really feel it and in their presence. And so that first game was pretty exciting. And I don't know what minute it was, but a majority of the fans start chanting my last name all together, and I felt the love from them. I know there's a lot of political issues and a lot of people that you know speak not to my face, behind closed doors about why is he playing for them or why is he here. But from what I heard and what I saw and what people told me to my face, everyone was excited I was there. But I know now that it wasn't all smiles back then.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that it had repercussions in terms of your career, just in terms of maybe opportunities, doors not opening up, making that decision?
Yeah, definitely. Um, you know, hindsight is 2020. I didn't know that at the time. When I'm making my decision, I'm, you know, kind of just getting started into my professional career. I didn't have someone that had been there, done that, that can tell me like this is what you should do. So for sure, if I played for the U.S., I'd have a lot more opportunities. I think if I was more patient, I think I would have gotten caps with Klinsmann. I think I could have helped actually, because right back, to be fair, has kind of been a rotating door ever since Trundalo has retired. So, it was always somewhere that I thought I would play. I could fill that void, but whether it was US not calling me in time or me making that decision to play for Iran too quickly, I definitely think it affected not just my trajectory of where I would be playing, but even my status as an MLS player.
You ended up participating, being part of the squad in the 2014 World Cup. Unfortunately, you didn't play. I was doing the national radio coverage. I was pleading with Carlos Queiroz to put you in. Vincent Alvarado said that you were overlooked in that tournament. I completely agree with that as well. It must have been a wonderful experience being part of a World Cup, Stephen. And unfortunately for you, one of my lasting memories of that World Cup was Argentina, Iran, and Lionel Messi, a stoppage time wonder goal to beat your country at the time. Maybe walk us through that.
Yeah, that was tough. That whole experience was kind of emotional roller coaster as far as you're so excited to be at the World Cup, something that I dreamt about since I was so young. That was probably one of my earliest dreams because before I watched the Clash of the Earthquakes, I was actually watching a lot of Brazil national team games. That was my like team growing up,
Sure.
and I that was my team before a club team. And so the fact that the World Cup is in Brazil, I'm there potentially to play. I couldn't have dreamt of something this exciting. But then you don't play. That was the hardest thing for me, being there, not playing. And when we did get eliminated by Argentina, and I talked to Carl Robinson. I told him I want to fly wherever the team is, which was in Colorado at the time, and I want to play right away. So I didn't go back to Vancouver. I went with all my stuff, straight to Colorado, and I just wanted to play because I'm a competitive athlete, and I was so disappointed not to play in Brazil at the World Cup, and so that was definitely tough. I won't tell you it was all sunshine and flowers and beautiful and this and that, because that was definitely tough not playing. But um, the most exciting part for me definitely was being named to that 23-man roster for sure, though.
Absolutely.
That moment was amazing.
I think you should have been part of the 2018 roster as well. When the Iranian team, they did really well. VAR played a massive role in that group with Spain and Portugal as well that we just experienced 2 summers ago. I want to skip ahead a little bit because there's a lot of Toronto FC supporters watching this tonight.
Sure.
They miss you up in Toronto as well.
Yeah,
it's not easy going from one Canadian team to another. But TFC were desperate for defenders at that time. They came off a season where they made the playoffs for the very first time. Steven, your buddy Justin Morrow was playing for the team. But there was 4 key players that they brought in that went from conceding 58 goals to I believe it was 34 or 36 goals your first year with the team. It was Clint Irwin, it was Steven Beitashour, it was Drew Moore, and Will Johnson. Tried, tested, and true domestic players. Was it a no-brainer at that time to join Toronto FC based upon the potential of the group?
Yeah, I actually wanted to go to TFC when I was looking at teams from San Jose because Justin was there. And so I kept telling my agent, like, does Toronto need a right back? I really wanted to go there because of the one aspect of grass. I didn't want to play on artificial turf. And so unfortunately they said, no, we don't need a right back. So I played my 2 years in Vancouver. And then when
they needed a right back.
They said they needed a right back. And so I'm looking at Toronto where, look, I wanted to come there 2 years ago. This is great. Now you guys are interested. And this is a team that scores a ton of goals. They scored 50. Oh, is that me?
I think it's you, but that's okay. Live broadcast, Steven. Live broadcast.
Live broadcast, guys. So that was a team that scored 58 goals, but also gave up 58 goals. I'm coming from Vancouver where we gave up the fewest goals in the league, or maybe the second fewest goals in the league. I can go there and help them. If they score the same amount of goals and I can help them give up less goals, that usually equates to something good. So it was a no-brainer to me. Obviously I talk to Justin all the time, and so I was super excited to go play with Michael Bradley, go to play with Giovinco, to go play with Josie Altidore. And then my buddy JMO, I'm like, this is going to be fun. And sure enough, it really was.
The success came relatively quickly that season, but it takes a while for a group to come together. But defensively, that group was so much better. You've played under Bob Bradley, Michael's father, and you played with Michael Bradley. Which individual is more intense to work with? Is it Michael or is it Bob?
I want to say Michael. I know Bob can probably be more intense, but we had 2 very good years in LAFC, so everything kind of is easier and happier when you're winning. There were moments on the field with Michael where it's just like, I think he might kill me right now.
It kind of balanced out things in the team because the dynamic, it was really interesting at that time. You had really a back line of all domestic, American, or that type of player. Then you had flair players sprinkled out through the team, whether it was Armando Cooper and Benoit Cheroux and, of course, Giovinco up top. And so you kind of needed that balance in the team.
Yeah, you definitely need that balance. And I think a lot of teams in the league don't necessarily realize that. I see a lot of Central American, South Americans players coming over, but it doesn't necessarily work out. You have to have players that, like Drew Moore, like Will Johnson, that have been in this league. They know what it takes to win because it's just not the same as other leagues. That's like saying I can go to any other league and just have success immediately. It's different there. And so that recipe that, Bez and that Vanny, that they put together, it really worked out. And you saw that first year where, we gave up maybe the second or third fewest goals in 16. and finished off third in the conference. And it was really setting us up for the next year.
There were two lasting memories that year that kind of defined where the club was going to go for me, Steven. The Canadian Championship, Will Johnson breaking his leg right at the death, winning that championship against your former club. And then it was the Eastern Conference finals.
Yeah.
Both legs, really. The second leg's remembered the most, but the first leg was crazy with the lines on the field. And then it's down 3-0, bringing 2 goals back. But it was that night under the lights, the Eastern Conference second leg. I mean, that for me was one of my best live footballing experiences that I've ever had. I mean, what was it like for you being in that atmosphere, the mist, the rain, it was special.
It really was special. And I think that was the best two-legged series in MLS history, honestly. Just the atmosphere with the light drizzle. You had the smoke flares kind of going off, not too much where you couldn't see, but you could kind of sense it. You really had that true, like that European, they talk about European feel. That had a European feel to it as far as football matches go. And the fact that, in the first leg, we did lose, but we also scored 2 goals on the road. So we're coming back to our place with a ton of confidence. And, for me specifically, personally, just to have that assist to Benoit, that, it was technically the winning goal to get us to the next round. So I'll always cherish that game more than game. Yeah, just because it was so special for me personally, but just as a team, it was honestly one of the greatest moments of my career.
Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, you lost in a penalty shootout to the Seattle Sounders at home. It was so cold that night. You were still in the field. Were you tempted to put your hand up to take one? Were you on the list? Were you the next shooter?
I was the next shooter, actually. I was 7th. JMO was 6th. And I feel bad to this day because I think he gets a little bit of flack, which he shouldn't, for, hitting the crossbar. But, between us, I think JMO will say the same thing. I'm a better penalty shooter. But I was so dead. My entire body was cramping up. And I was so worried that I would just cramp up when I'm shooting this ball and scuff it. And so I told him, I'm like, if you feel better, you take it, and then I'll go after you. But usually I would go first. And so I felt so bad that he's getting this blame for hitting the crossbar. I'm like, guys, like, you don't understand. No one ever wants to miss a penalty, It takes a lot of courage to go up there and take a penalty and hit it with confidence, which he did. And so that moment was for sure tough, but man, did it drive our entire team, him, me, our entire team. It was so much fuel to us.
There was no off season. You guys just kept that running all the way to the next December when you went on and won that MLS Cup. I mean, that for me, I understand that 2 teams since in the Red Bulls and LAFC have gone on to achieve more points in a season. But that Toronto FC team, 2017, Steven, it's hard for me to say there's ever been a better collection of players on the field, just ticking all the boxes: talent, determination, the coaching, the system, just everything just ticked over. It was magical to watch that 2017 season.
Yeah, and for me, it is the best team in MLS history. I know a lot of people asked me during our campaign last year with LAFC because we were breaking so many records. But at the end of the day, the only thing people look at are championships. And so when that's the only team in MLS history to win the treble, while you're also breaking the single season points record, there's no debate. I don't know why people even ask me, like, oh, well, you played for both teams. Yeah, but there's only one team to have won all 3. Even if you say LAFC won 2 trophies, it's like, well, they still got 1 more. So, for me, that was by far the best team in MLS history, and it will be. It's tough to do.
When I'm asked about the biggest warriors in sport, your name now immediately comes to mind as one of the toughest dudes ever. Canadian Championship final, another game that's remembered for a late goal by Sebastian Giovinco. That day, I remember, we'll make sure we link to the video at some point. One of the most violent on-field collisions I've ever seen. Kyle Fisher, the Montreal Impact, crushed you. I was calling the game on radio that day. I sounded probably like a WWE announcer. It was like, demolish! Like, I was going nuts because I couldn't believe what I saw. He wasn't sent off somehow. and you were hurt. You were hurt bad. You finished that game, and that night you couldn't sleep. And it turns out that you lacerated your pancreas. For all you amateur doctors out there, that is a life-threatening injury. You lacerated your pancreas, and you finished a championship match, Steven. That story is just one of the all-timers.
Yeah, I didn't realize how stupid it was to finish the game, but I also didn't realize I had a lacerated pancreas. I couldn't breathe. I did think I was gonna die when I got hit, but when I went into the locker room and I was able to breathe again, I was like, okay, I think I'm all right. Is anything broken? The doctors checked me out. The trainers checked me out. They're like, nothing's broken, which they were right. My bones were fine, but they don't have X-ray vision. They can't see if my pancreas is lacerated and just blood's everywhere. So at the time, I went back in, and there were a few moments where I really debated coming off. Probably the first 5 minutes in the second half, I was like, yeah, something's definitely wrong. But there was a little hit between Fisher and myself around the 5th minute, where I kind of got him back and I felt better. And I said, you know what? I think I can
Remember
finish the rest of the game. Yeah.
that.
So
Very good.
adrenaline took over.
Uh, and then along the way, I mean, they've been replaying a lot of these TFC games across that run, the fight in the tunnel with Altidore and the Red Bulls. But the thing that sticks out the most to me is in the MLS Cup final, for really the first time all season, you guys changed your formation. You were playing as an outside wingback all season. You came into a back four.
Mhm.
When Greg Vanney told you and the team about it, I mean, what was your reaction at that time, and how did it all come together to the point where that 2-0 victory over Seattle, you completely played them off the field?
Yeah. I think it was a smart move, just because that way we can get another attacking player onto the field. We had a feeling that they were going to try to sit in again, not have any shots on target again, and somehow hold up the trophy. And we're like, you know what? We're going to take it to them. And we did. And we took it to them again. Thankfully, this time the ball went in the back of the net, because that should have been our second trophy for sure. I think they robbed us, and they'll admit to robbing us in 2016. But it was just that, for the type of season that we had all year of 2017, to finish it off the right way, because not many teams can have a great regular season and then finish it off with an MLS Cup, a la LAFC last year.
Great group of guys as well. I mean, Steven, that had to be like, I don't know if you experience something with that kind of group of individuals very often in any walk of life. I mean, that was a special group. That's what made it that much more difficult after the party, after the parade. That that was your last game for Toronto FC.
Yeah.
It just seems like these contractual things unnecessarily moved you around to the point where people at the club told me after, and obviously things didn't go that well for Toronto FC after the CONCACAF Champions League, that they underestimated how much you leaving the team would mean for the group. I mean, you have to, it's probably no consolation, but you have to kind of feel the same way.
Yeah, and it kind of hurts when I hear that, because all the teams that I was with, I wanted to stay. They all know that. They'll talk to any of the GMs. And I have great relationships with all the past coaches and all the past GMs. And for whatever reason, they just don't value me. What you said, they undervalue me or underestimate having me on the team. And I think a lot of that goes to what I do. I go under the radar the way I play my game. I'm not flashy. I don't score goals. And so I think a lot of times people are like, yeah, we can replace him. We can get someone else. It's not a big deal. But every team, San Jose, Vancouver, Toronto, all of them said, man, we messed up by letting you go. And it hurts, because all three of those teams, I still wanted to be part of that team. And they were teams that we had so much success with. So I never want to leave something that was going so well with.
I'm not sure if you still are, but you were part of the MLS Players Union. They negotiated a new CBA, and it seems like players like you, these domestic, hardworking, determined players, which are really the glue guys in the team, because of contractual stipulations, TAM, GAM, and all that, often the new CBA kind of rectify any of those issues?
Yeah, I was part of the union a few years ago. I'm not with the players union with LAFC, so I can't tell you exactly all the details.
Right.
Obviously, I know the basics of it, as we all got an outline of it, but I think there's still finishing off actually small details, but yeah, I definitely think it hurts domestic players, with these TAM GAMs. If you're not with the U.S. national team, it's tough to get proper value. Uh, you can play a European player with TAM money, and he only counts as $150,000 on the salary cap. Well, how is that fair? Why can't you pay me with TAM? Because I'm not a foreign player, or is it because I'm not, um, on the national team? I don't know. I think if you could play some of these players like, a Justin Morrow or Drew Moore, myself, there's a lot of domestic players that I can think of over some of these Central American, South American, or European players. I think it would fit an MLS club a lot better, but it's easier for these GMs just to use these outlines that are in the CBA, this TAM, this GAM, and to be roster compliant. So
Um,
it's unfortunate for me.
it was a consolation for me. At least you landed in good spots every step of the way. I mean, the consolation for you was that you ended up back in California with LAFC. And we only have about 5 minutes left, Steve. But like the way that that city is rallied around a second team in Los Angeles isn't an Chivas thing. It's a team that's like more downtown LA. There's a vibe to it. El Tráfico, those games were exciting from the get-go. I mean, you were part of something really special for the last 2 years in LA. And I'm assuming that your Rolodex is now littered with Hollywood celebrities now.
Yeah, I wish. But it was definitely a fun 2 years. I don't want to say the doors closed because we're just waiting for the season to get back because I'm still a free agent, and so who knows? I could be back with LAFC, but for now, free agent. Hopefully, the league comes back soon, and then I can sign somewhere. But that was definitely a fun 2 years, and it's tough to say that you can bring a second team into Los Angeles where you have arguably the best team as far as the Galaxy goes, as far as trophies, of success. And I think we surpassed them as far as the notoriety and, the ooh and the on, the winning and all that. LAFC, they hit the ground running. And, the ownership group, the type of players, the Carlos Velas that they're bringing in, the young players, the Rossis that, weren't necessarily heard of, but now you hear of these big Italian clubs trying to buy our players from 15, $20 million. So I think they're doing a lot of things right. And so it was definitely a fun, exciting 2 years to be part of.
It's incredible. It seemed like there were two teams, and it was an incredible team in LAFC, especially last year. But two teams gave you problems. Zlatan and the Galaxy could always score goals. Those El Tráfico games, I mean, it's probably the only thing that's comparable for you to TFC Montreal.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't think it was going to be like that because Montreal TFC has that history, and you sense why there's that rivalry. Obviously, the close proximity of the two cities, but when you have that long of a history of matches, LAFC Galaxy didn't have that. It was just, hey, that's our closest team. We don't like them, and then the fans build this rivalry. But then the first game is Zlatan's first game. We're winning 3-0, and somehow they win 4-3. You couldn't write a script of better than that. And every game since has been just up to that standard. And so, thankfully, we had the last laugh in the playoffs, and now our record is close to even. But before that playoff game, they're kicking our butts in the standings as far as wins and not. We never beat them. So
well, that Galaxy team just couldn't defend, right? They needed more Steven Beitashour. Clearly, they needed that.
Unfortunately, we couldn't defend either. The goals in these games were ridiculous.
Ridiculous. And then the Seattle Sounders somehow beat you guys in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs last year. Just a team that's supremely organized, Steven. I think there's something to be learned there. Your team had all the talent in the world, but the way that Seattle team ticks over, you got to tip your cap sometimes to what they put into that MLS Cup run.
Yeah, and they played their cards right. They knew we were the better team, but they came in similar to 2016 against TFC in the finals, and they defended well, and they just tried to take advantage of their moments, which they did. I don't know how many shots they ended up having against LAFC in the conference final, but I felt like anytime they shot, it was in. And so, it's tough when you have that many numbers behind the ball and you're trying to break them down, and they're so organized, and they're a group that's been there and they've done that. So experience has a lot to play with it. And, we didn't necessarily have that type of experience to push us over the hump.
You mentioned that you could potentially return to LAFC. What's it been like being a free agent now? In your early 30s. Has there been interest? How much interest? And where would you prefer to be, Steven?
Yeah, obviously, I think LAFC is the easy choice if I can be here. It's in California, where my family is. We love it here. It's great, but similar to other situations, San Jose, Vancouver, Toronto. If the two sides can't agree on terms, then you have to look other ways. So. Right now the whole league is shut down, so we can't really talk to anyone.
Right.
I don't think anyone's going to make a move. But hopefully teams can look at their first two games and realize that they need an upgrade at right back. And I'm not going to name any names. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I watched all the games those first 2 weeks because I wasn't with the team, and so I'm looking at specifically with the right backs. And there's only a few teams that I think are okay in the right back spot. The rest can use an upgrade. So hopefully, when the season comes back, if it is shorter period, you don't have as much wiggle room. You can't take your time and be like, oh, we're just going to give this player a shot and see how it works out. You don't have time. You want to make the playoffs? You want to win? Yes, no, then let's go. So,
well, if you like winning, you get Steven Beitashour on the phone and you bring him to your team quick. I want to wrap things up with our best five segment. It's rapid fire. Just 5 questions. Tell me your best. Okay, it's very simple, Steven. The best player that you ever played with.
David Beckham.
Okay.
Does that count?
All Star? Yeah, that's fine. You're just avoiding the conversation. Vela versus Javinko.
Exactly.
Was that intent? I think there's an argument for both players in that category, but they're different players, aren't they? It's tough.
Yeah, as far as Vela and Javinko?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. The different players, both unbelievable. But yeah, I played with him on actually, you know what? I'm gonna change that. Can I go with Henry?
Yeah,
He's
sure.
the best player. I think biggest name was Beckham, but that's why it came to my mind first. But Henry on that All Star team, so I played with him. He is by far the best player I played with.
Blink on Vela versus Javinko. Blink once if it's Vela, twice if it's Javinko. Who's better? You whip. Yeah. It's okay. Javinko's in Italy right now. He's not watching this. The best player you ever played against?
Best player played against? I guess you could throw Henry again in that mix. Now, you know what? I think at the time, Zlatan was so difficult to play against. He was just so big and difficult to mark. So I'll throw him in there. I think Henry slowed down a little bit in those final years, so it wasn't as difficult. But I'll say Zlatan.
I think on that debut goal, I hate to bring it up, I think you were right there, right next to when he turned and ball. Yeah.
I was running back like this because Dejan got pummeled by Kamara. I'm like, that's a foul. That's a foul.
Yeah,
and
right.
Winding up. And I'm like, blow your whistle before he hits this, because afterwards you're not gonna blow it. And sure enough, he scores.
Did he talk crap to you on the field too?
Was he talking? He talks the whole time.
Do you like that?
Whether they're winning or losing, but I know he likes it, so I don't engage in it. I'll get my shots in and I'll just back up. But if you talk with him, I know he likes it, so I don't even engage in it.
Really?
Yeah,
he scored this goal at BMO Field. I don't know if you saw the highlights. It was just ridiculous.
Poor guy. It's like, what are you supposed to do there?
Yeah, I'm like, your buddy.
Get there. First of all, he's like 8 feet tall, and then he gets his leg up even higher. You're like, this is not right. You shouldn't be this athletic.
He's amazing. I think MLS really misses him, honestly. Just he can play, the persona, just everything.
For sure.
Who's the best team that you ever played against, whether it's club or internationally?
Argentina. If you want to say I wasn't on the field and that doesn't count, okay, I'll pick someone in MLS. Chelsea for the All Star team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that team was pretty good. That was when Hazard just came over to Chelsea, and uh, at the time I was playing right back, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about this guy, like how good he is. So thankfully, I don't think he ever dusted me and made me look silly. But yeah, that team was pretty good.
Do you ever wake up in a cold sweat thinking about that Messi goal against
Uh,
Iran?
if I was on the field, I would be. That's how competitive I am.
Yeah.
There are multiple games in MLS where it still irks me to this day.
The best manager you ever played for? You played for some good ones.
Yeah, I honestly have a great relationship with all my past managers, and I can tell you, I still text all of them to this day. Uh, but as far as best actual managers, I think Bob has to be the best one as far as the attention to detail and just his style of play and describing exactly how he wants us to play. I felt like there was just so much attention to every side of the team and the way we defend and attack and every position. It was maybe it was because it was the first 2 years, so the team was brand new, but man, there was so much detail, and I've never seen any coach in youth, college, professional have that much detail.
It makes it that much more impressive. It did come with an expansion team, all players coming together so quickly as well. And finally, your best soccer memory. It might be a moment, might be a memory. What sticks with you?
Uh, 2017, holding the MLS Cup. Uh, every player's dream is winning the championship, and we did that year. So I don't think anything can beat that for me.
I think there's people in Toronto still hungover from that day in that night in 2017.
Josie's Josie's parade speech still lives on, and people will never forget that. And
You know
that
what? My only regret about the ceremony at City Hall, I wanted to hear more from all the players, like all of you to get on the mic. It was great hearing from the owners and the front. Like that was great, but I was like, give me more of the players because I wanted to hear more of that.
Josie said enough for all of us.
Okay.
I think you described it better than we could have even imagined.
I'll let you get back into the laboratory and do your whatever he said right now. Steven, this has been great. Where can people follow along, keep up with what you have going on?
Yeah, so I've been a little bit MIA. I apologize. People are asking me to be more involved with social media, and I'm trying. I'm thinking about bringing a little bit of beta time back, but
Yes.
Instagram, sbeta33. Same with Twitter. I'm not too active on Twitter. It's mostly Instagram, but yeah, right now it's tough for me. I'm just trying to work out as much as I can and stay fit for when the league comes back because I think I could still play 2-3 more years and help a MLS team hopefully win a cup. So right now that's my focus, and if I hear some good news, I'll get back to it and get back on there.
Awesome. Please
Yeah.
let us know. Any team would be lucky to have you. I say that sincerely. One of the good guys in the game, Steven. I really appreciate you taking some time tonight. And I hope that we learned a lot. I think that everyone learned a lot more about you tonight. That was good stuff.
I learned some stuff about me tonight. That was pretty detailed. I appreciate you having me on. I miss seeing your face as well. I miss you guys. We had some good conversations while I was at TFC. So I hope you're doing well. Hope the family's doing well, staying safe, sheltering in place for sure, and hopefully we all just get through this together and we'll come out the other side a lot stronger for sure.
Well said. Thanks so much. He is Steven Beitashour, MLS Player of the Decade at right back according to MLSsoccer.com, and I absolutely agree. I think the Toronto FC and Vancouver Whitecaps fans are very thankful for his contributions to both of those clubs. I want to thank Steven for his time tonight. We'll be back next Tuesday night with another great guest coming your way. I want to thank Armin, David, Kurt, and the entire One Soccer crew. Remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. Share this. Tell people about this show as we continue to dig deep. Coming up next on our YouTube channel, Canadian Premier League action from last season. The most goals scored in a CPL game last season. It was York 9 in Halifax. We're going to replay that game on our channel next. On behalf of Steve and everyone here at One Soccer, I am Gareth Wheeler. Keep on growing those mustaches. Stay home and stay safe, Canada.